My guest today is Reedy. EJ is the founder and CEO of Intentional Gravity, where he works with science and tech leaders, founders, and organizations on career development, building global companies, and creating thriving communities across the Midwest. I was lucky to get to know EJ through the life sciences ecosystem in the Chicago area, and right away I knew I was going to like him. He's focused on using his social capital to connect others and to use a little bit of creativity and his experience to make the connections really meaningful. I'm excited to co-facilitate his current fellowships called Beyond the Bench for scientists who are thinking of life after bench work. And it's one of the different fellowships and communities EJ offers through Intentional Gravity. So today I hope you get to learn a little bit more about EJ's nonlinear career and why it's making more meaning for him now more than ever. So welcome to the Rooted Leader, the Leader Journeys. I'm so glad you're here. I'm here today with my friend EJ Reedy, founder and CEO of Intentional Gravity and new friend. So I'm so happy to have EJ as a guest. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Kathleen.
Yeah, as you know, my hope here is just to have others introduced to the wonderful professionals I'm finding in my network that are going through similar pivots or reassessment of what they want to do to create more meaning in their lives and in their profession. And you are one that really resonates with me in terms of what you're doing. And I'm really happy to have you here today. So
appreciate the opportunity.
So tell me a little bit about you. Who are you currently, EJ?
Who am I currently? It's so interesting.
Yeah.
I'm many things, many different hats, always have been, always will be. Getting more comfortable with accepting that. I'm founder and CEO of Intentional Gravity, so a company that helps to create and enhance gravity for people and for ecosystems, working in and around tech. I'm also the director of platform for Pace Healthcare Capital, which is an early stage venture capital firm investing in digital health startups throughout the Midwest. In addition to that, I'm a parent, I'm a recovering economist, I'm a lifelong addict of innovation and constantly trying to figure out how I can find new ways to better understand myself and better understand how I can have impact.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's one of the things that we really connect on is this idea to experiment and explore sort of things that aren't necessarily available right now, but we can sense that might be needed, especially related to community. One of the things that I really love about you, EJ, is I see you as a connector. How does that land for you?
Oh, no, completely. I think it's funny as I talk to my parents, they'll say that when I was in the crib, that very early on that they knew that I was going to be a little different because I was always bringing people together. So that from the early days, my mom has said I've always been kind of driven to convene and connect, and that's very core to kind of things that I find very natural. It's funny, I think as you get older, you start to recognize that the way in which you think is different from how other people think. And so for me, I'm constantly trying to figure out how to bring people together, trying to find ways in which I can help people to achieve what I call resonance, kind of connection with others in a more meaningful way. And I never really expected to be working in innovation. That was something that I fell into a second job out of college, but I love it. And I've been lucky enough to spend my whole career working in and around innovation, having worked at different types of institutions from philanthropy to VC to startup and everything in between. And I think that gives me a really broad perspective on building people, building institutions, and creating community.
Yeah, no, I love that. I can see that. Any one of those areas resonate more for you, or do you just love the heterogeneous mix?
I am the type of person that I don't like being walled in, would be kind of like how I describe. And so I really enjoy working across. I think that too often people work within silos and we can spend our whole careers kind of in one industry. I love that I've worked across different industries. I love that I've worked across different types of organizations and with different types of people, because that helps me to understand myself and the nature of those entities just differently. Everybody's got different incentives, and there's opportunities at every stage to create community and to leverage and to accelerate impact. And inherently, that's what I'm driven by.
Yeah, I love that. You said impact more than once, and I love that too. So tell us a little bit more about that former career structured role, and when did you start to realize it was not necessarily suited for you at this stage?
Well, I've had, I guess, a couple of iterations of industry and career. From an early age, actually thought I'd work in nonprofit management. That was really what I wanted to go into in high school. Then I pursued training in economics, went to work for the Fed, and expected to have been a lifelong employee of the Federal Reserve, and really am somebody that values institutions and change within institutions and individuals. And then I went to work in philanthropy from there. And so that was a pretty seismic shift just in terms of thinking, because now I began to work in 2-year, 5-year, 10-year kind of timeframes for achieving change. And that's definitely something that I think I felt a great deal of alignment and a great deal of mental mapping, I think, for lack of a better term, where I tend to think in terms of arcs of programs and how one thing's going to impact another. And that was really exciting. And I really, really enjoyed that. Most recently, I left full-time employment to start my own company called Intentional Gravity, as I mentioned. And that was not something I planned to do. Oh, actually, it's funny working in entrepreneurship and then not thinking that you would start your own career, or not fully knowing when you reach that point that you needed more independence. For me, that was really about having more opportunity to move faster and to move in the way that matched both the ways in which I saw the world and the creativity that I wanted to go after. And I just knew. I ultimately just knew that there were questions that I couldn't answer in my day job, and that it was affecting my health. And I was becoming more and more frustrated with the ability of my career to move in the directions that I wanted it to move. It's been scary, but amazing to jump in and to really be able to tackle things that make sense to me and that create impact as I have to find them, but that aren't really always logical. I failed so many times, so many programs that, have not moved forward, but at its core, for me, I knew that I'm at a stage in my career where I really wanted to work on continuing to develop individuals independent of their work or their current day job. I wanted to continue to develop ecosystems. And about 10 years ago, I went from telecommuting to working physically in Chicago, where I'd lived actually 10 years, but always been disconnected. And I feel very strongly about place-based work. And so I'm trying to broaden towards supporting innovation and entrepreneurs across the Midwest. Actually, I use the term entrepreneurs, and I should distinguish. I think one of the things in many of the ecosystems in which I work, there are new and emerging places to be a part of something that is part of the innovation, the tech ecosystem. Those things have shifted a lot over time, and it's lovely. But one of the things that I identified was that I'd spent so much time working at the beginning of the pipeline, focusing on entrepreneurs, the startup process. And almost exclusively now, I focus on the other 98%. Folks that work in innovation, but maybe you joined a company, maybe you're a bench scientist, maybe you have been doing R&D for 30 years, just trying to figure out a way to more holistically find ways that can help people to advance their career where they're at. Because it's exciting. Very often I work with emerging professionals, and there are some folks that are in their third or fourth startup job. I'm thinking of a couple people in particular that have been scientists, but also, in my opinion, they feel very unseen. If you're a serial scientist that joins and helps to de-risk early stage companies, where do you go? What's your community? How do you develop your own professional skills, your leadership, other things like that? Because I think the longer that you work in these ecosystems, you realize that it's not just about the startup. It's not just about the beginning stage. It's about the growth. I love working with people that are trying to build across industries and to really kind of shore up their lives and essentially this ecosystem. That's how I define it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the connection beyond as well. And then also helping to guide or navigate through some of this tension they're feeling, but not yet knowing what that means for them. And you've seen it and done it and been there. So it's nice to have your guidance and the connection with others so they can see that as well.
Well, and there's so many, I call them micro tech communities in Chicago, or micro innovation communities. And I've been intentional in not working in any one with intentional gravity, because I've worked in fintech, biotech, health tech, and very often on the boundaries where interesting conversations, interesting things pop up. And I love creating programs and working with people that are experienced leaders within biotech and bringing them together with somebody from fintech so they can understand.
Cross-pollination,
And so that's become a value. It's really become a way in which we approach things that is different, I'd say, than others providing services here in town.
So tell me, how did you choose the name of your company?
Intentional gravity, it popped to me. Like most things, you don't realize that you've been thinking about it. I have always described the work that I've done. Most recently, I was in an ecosystem development platform role. And in that type of work, I would describe that the goal is to create gravity where people don't necessarily even know why they want to be there, but they want to be there. And so as I thought about what I wanted to do with the company and the overall work, intentional gravity, it's a juxtaposition. Gravity is both something that you can create it, but you need it. And quite frankly, most of us, it's just there. But for me, I think that we constantly have to think about how to be creative and using the momentum we have wherever we're at to achieve and to see new things. So a lot of the work that I end up doing is bringing people closer together, so then they can leverage each other's work and each other's networks and gravity to explore something, to move faster, to move slower. And I think it's just really resonated since I chose it.
Yeah, I loved it when I first heard it. I met you before I knew the name of your company, but I love the intentionality behind it. That to me is so much about who you are and what you're trying to do. Tell me a little bit about somebody who has been an inspiration to you throughout this maybe throughout your life, or maybe you've had a couple.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think you're one of those people that I've drawn inspiration from throughout this process. I have 3 folks that I'm working with in terms of being co-pilots on different programs. And I think the thing that cuts across all of those folks is that there's something in our relationship that I found additive, just like I found was something that I wanted to learn. And so with you, Kathleen, it was something that I think we'd mostly known each other through LinkedIn, but I'd really admired, and I had heard from others, positive experiences,
watch out for her.
In person. But I knew that you approached things a little bit more broadly, and that you were, helping people to navigate what sometimes can appear to be very crisp lines that are not often crisp, whether that be working in big companies, pharma, startups. I really admired that. And so Crystal Caden Price is another person that I'm working with on a program. And Crystal, for those that know her, just know that she's really a force of nature. She connects and is constantly pushing herself and her communities. She's one of those people that really crosses the boundary of being involved in tech and arts, which I really appreciate. And so I've learned a lot from her just in our friendship and professional lives, because, since I've started the company, that's definitely something that I've tried to enhance, is just to allow myself and encouraging myself to find artistry and to encourage artistry in myself. That's been really, really, really helpful.
And you can see just in the artwork behind you, but also just in some of the glimpses I have into your life of how you appreciate those things and the beauty and the art, and then bringing that into the relationship, I think is so critical. And I was so thankful for the introduction to Crystal, because you're right. She has amazing energy, curiosity. Love that. Go ahead.
No, and I think it's funny that I think there's many of us that have spent careers in the tech ecosystem that are trying to bring different approaches to it and to work with people across different swaths. And I think that's incredibly important. It doesn't matter how long you've worked in an ecosystem or a topic, there's always going to be something new. There's something I'm constantly trying to challenge myself to learn more about this or more about that, or, present something from this perspective or that perspective, because I'm really like a walking mental map of like what's happening in Chicago, how people can connect in, and help people reflect back on their own kind of personal career journeys. And that's fun. So I love, the many mentors that have kind of helped me to trust in myself more, and have paused with me in times of a failure or challenge. I constantly feel like I'm probably trying too much, but I also know that I would be bored otherwise, and I've gotten better with time about accepting that you test things and you see, and then you move on.
Absolutely.
The timing can change, and the more that you battle that, the more frustration you can have. And so I've gotten better at accepting that and really looking for the many areas that where resonance exists.
Yeah, no, I love what you said there, because we talked a little bit before we got on the call here about the importance of experimentation and exploring, especially in this mindset of meeting people where they are, take some learning and testing of different things. In fact, I had created a community about 2 years ago, and it lasted for about almost a year and a half. The connection continued, but the way that the platform wasn't very easy to work with. And so
Mhm.
this idea of creating this podcast of the journeys was really coming out of that idea. So while that failed, there were elements of it that were successful. And I had to really reframe that for myself to say,
Mhm.
yes, that didn't work out, but there were elements that continue to be successful and then turn into something else. So have you had, as you reflect, are there elements of things that gave you inklings to what's working now, but maybe didn't work as you had planned at the time?
Sure. I think that, I mean, it's a constant evolution.
That's
I would
right, isn't
say,
it? Yeah.
even as it's funny, the things that people, outsiders probably would measure me against are probably different than the things that I measure myself against. And so for me, take one concrete example. At the beginning of this year, I was focused around kind of four different concepts. Each is a different professional development learning opportunity. Most of what I do now is really focused on creating small cohorts, small groups of people that are on a similar journey. And it's a matter of defining that journey in such a way that it makes sense. They're all very different. So currently running one for Beyond the Bench, that well, as co-facilitator, while doing one for AI for leaders, helping leaders across different types of tech to adopt and to have fellowship in the journey that is AI meeting 2026, everywhere, all the time, and everything. And those are fantastic, completely different, fantastic. There were two that I tried to launch that didn't work, and that I had to step back from and reconsider. One of those was one focused just on Chicago, and specifically on trying to bring together people from the tech community to better integrate into the city. And that's a lifelong frustration that I have within the institutions that exist here in Chicago. In my opinion, aren't super friendly to integration with tech. So I wanted to give a shot. Ultimately, I think that I will have such a community. Decided to pivot and to incorporate that as a series of events within my overall 2026 offering. I actually held the first this week, and it was phenomenal. It was not what I initially planned. Stepping back and stepping away from the expectations that I had, it was a way more productive meeting. And it was something that just blew me out of the water. It was a conversation I'd never had before. Melissa Harris of Harris and Kern was our guest speaker. And it just was fascinating to really look at one person and their journey. We've morphed this program into something called the Chicago Kaleidoscope. And so it's essentially one person and their journey with Chicago over time to really understand what the lenses are and how they've adjusted to better understand and to live a more full life. And I'm super excited to continue that, and wasn't what I had planned initially. but I think it will be very, very positive, and both personally and for the larger community of folks that I'm working with.
Yeah, I love that you allow yourself to iterate based on what you're feeling or seeing and saying, this model I had didn't fit this, but there's another way to do it that's even more meaningful. So I love that. And that's the joy of being able to do it yourself.
Yep. And I think that I think too often people get hung up in that once you put yourself out there that you can't make a change. And in reality, I'd rather keep changing to make it more meaningful. And even the programs that I'm on the second, third iteration of are continuing to change. I think in the coming year, I'll have kind of the first programs that I feel like are solidified enough to really not change significantly. But in these environments, the truth is that the world changes really fast. And so I'm constantly trying to figure out what's coming 6 months, 12 months down the line, and so when I began this set of programs, fellowships that I'm running, I was really worried about long-term unemployment amongst the tech community. And I think that's a topic that's just beginning to explode. You're seeing it written about more, but I just think that there's a lot of disruption and a lot of change, and the expectation that there's only one way in one community and one iteration, or that people need to go back to a university for retraining, that seems very outdated to me. And I think that there have to be better options for more real time. I'm very intentional with the programs that I do not run classes. I run fellowships that have cohort meetings, but it's very much a peer exchange model because take, for example, the AI, it's so fast. It's next to impossible to represent that you understand and fully know every question. But there's an incredible value in creating a space that's safe enough for people to experiment and to ask questions and to learn in a real way. And I love doing that.
And they're all touching AI differently. So it's even better, even more important to have that greater vision of what it could be. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think here. There's so many questions. What advice would you have given your younger self or somebody who is wanting to make a shift from a more structured environment?
I think I would have given myself, my advice would have come around slowing down enough to accept your gifts, because I think too often we aren't aware enough to fully step towards the things that differentiate us and the things that we can do in the world. And for a long time, I would say that I had an expectation of what a career looked like.
Sure.
And what I should or shouldn't do.
That's right.
And ultimately, it's not that I may well go back to work for someone else at some point if it's the right opportunity. But for me, it's about continuing to be more aware of the many, many different ways in which I can accomplish things. And I love the work that I do now. I love the transition. I've really not regretted it since. I think that it's hard with the expectations of society sometimes.
Absolutely.
I've had moments of doubt. I've had moments where, and if I didn't, I'd be concerned. I'm someone who's driven to change and to create, but fundamentally believes in the strength of institutions. And so it took me a while, and actually, I don't even know if I would have fully recognized that had I not begun to work on entrepreneurship. But I've always been working to change institutions, and I've always been working to change things from within and outside. And
that
so
can be really hard because it's not always welcome. It's disruptive to efficiency in some eyes. Yeah, I feel you. I'm wired a little bit similarly. And so pivoting and exploring and looking towards change to help make things up to date is something that's natural, and it's not always welcome. So
it's not. I don't even know that it's not always welcome. I fundamentally believe that we're driven to make the world a little bit better. I think that over time, sometimes that gets taken out of us. It can be trauma. It can just be the burn, the craziness that is, everything.
The driven world.
Yeah. And I think probably one of the things that most makes me realize that I'm on a good path for me is that I've never felt more creative. And I think that's a gift. I don't even necessarily understand, but my body knows.
Yeah,
I
I
need to
love
do
that
more of
you
them.
are paying more attention to that. I also feel that, but take some time to undo the wiring that has been
Mhm.
done for most of our careers. What is bringing more joy to your life, personal, professional, whatever?
It's funny right now, the thing that I'm finding joy in is actually my son's volleyball games. So we're in the midst of the season, and with time, learned more and more to block off time to not multitask, to just be present. And so now I'm starting to associate the spring with volleyball season and carving out time for 4 hours twice a week to go and to be present and to see volleyball games. My son's a sophomore, and so I'm starting to have feelings of empty nest, and I just really, really appreciate the time to see him growing and, becoming an adult and finding his own joy. And it's lovely to be able to participate.
No, I love that so much. I relate to that as being an empty nester. And in the summer, we become full empty nesters, no longer coming home for college. So it's a transition and finding ourselves. So I love that you're spending that time. Okay, so I'm going to transition now to the lightning round questions that are just a little bit more personal and fast. So
Sure.
mountains or beach?
Beach.
Beach. Okay. You want to
I would
elaborate?
actually be more specific. So
Okay.
I grew up on like the beaches of Minnesota at the family cabin, and not fully clean, a little bit of algae, a little bit of
Nature.
a little bit of nature. And that's still the beach that most resonates. I mean, I love it, Bahamas beach or something like that. But the one that calls me is definitely the lake beach.
Yeah, I get that. There's something about lake water that is just.
Yeah.
What's your go-to beverage in the morning?
So I'm a coffee person, surprise, surprise. But, I actually like a little bit of flavor, half calf. I realize that I have no capacity to regulate my coffee intake. And so I've given up over time. I've also discovered that I really like coffee with peppermint. So a lot of times I'll put peppermint
Okay,
into
I haven't tried that
which
yet.
is a little bit unusual, but
Oh, it feels a little weird.
depending on the roast, I really
Okay.
enjoy it.
What's a current non-negotiable for you?
I think a current non-negotiable for me is showing up as my full self,
Yeah.
which is not always easy. I wear multiple hats. To me, they're coherent, and
What matters?
I want to be a part of places that recognize the full coherency, and allow me to do that.
Oh, EJ, I love that. That resonates a whole lot with me too. Yeah. What's your go-to rest ritual? It
So
doesn't
almost
have
every night I end with the Great Pottery Throwdown or the Great British Bake Off. And so even though I've probably seen them up to 10 times in their entirety, they're relaxing for me. So those tend to be kind of my go-tos. Sometimes even just listening, which is kind of crazy because I know the dialogue enough that I could almost verbatim repeat the seasons, but there's something in that ritual for me.
I did not even know there was a pottery one.
It's
so
very
that's-
fun. It's
Okay.
very, very fun. Yeah.
That could be something I see myself getting into eventually is pottery, just the feel and the creation.
Yeah.
Okay, complete this sentence. Now my work feels blank.
More creative.
I love that. Yeah. I think that's where you and I really do connect, that creativity and just that wanting to learn and serve others in a way that we may not have had that opportunity before. It's so inspiring to me. So I thank you so much for your time today. And always, I learn from you. I really do just love your approach of creating community at a time people need it so much. And especially with this particular segment you work in, it's a gift to these emerging leaders and people at all levels. So thank you,
Well, I
Jay.
appreciate you so much, Kathleen. So thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for all of the ongoing work together. And here's to more creation and more exploration to come.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much.
I'm glad you got a chance to learn about EJ's career and his journey from nonprofit to VC to connecting people in his ecosystem. One of the things I love about EJ is his creativity and his unique approach to bringing people together. He's a fantastic laid-back style with a true attention to detail, which you can see is just his love of bringing art, technology, and people together. Please see the show notes to learn more about EJ Reedy and intentional gravity. And if you're a little bit curious about your own path, find more about my coaching services as well as my testimonials and client success stories on aspiretogrowco. So thanks for joining. And as always, stay rooted in your empathy, authenticity, and a little bit of courage, because I hope you're seeing that journeys don't need to be linear to be meaningful.